Welcome to Full Circle. I'm glad you could be with us today. Well, coming up in our music showcase, we have our musicians who will perform a song called Trouble in Mind. Well, certainly our first guest knows about Trouble in Mind. Her son committed suicide after struggling with severe depression. She also has a story of overcoming her own bout with cancer. Here to tell us about her incredible inspirational life is Pam Faerber. She is a co-owner of Faerber's Be Window and an inspiration to all who have met. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So Pam, before we talk about your son and the journey and what that has done to your life, you've overcome a lot of struggles in your own life. I know we met about 20 years ago. You had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and here you are, a survivor. Tell us about that journey.
When I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, Suzanne, my first thought was, well, I'll be dead within 2 years, because I didn't know anyone lived through cancer, much less ovarian. And I'm here to tell you that cancer can be cured. The trick is to find it in early curable stages. I helped found Ovar'coming Together here with Kay Binford and Nancy Hines in Indianapolis, and then helped found the Ovarian Cancer National Alliance. It took us 16 years to get a national consensus statement that there were in fact symptoms that could lead to early stage diagnosis.
Let's talk about those symptoms, because I remember talking with you before. It really is that silent cancer that just suddenly seems to appear.
Well, part of the problem is physicians are still trained in medical schools that there are no symptoms. So consequently, the average woman with ovarian cancer has been to 3 doctors over a period of 2 months to 2 years before she's diagnosed. We are still finding 80% of the women with ovarian cancer in advanced stages, by that stage 3 or 4.
So are there some of those early symptoms that you could make us aware of? And certainly when we talk with our doctor, we can be more informed.
Bloating, a feeling of fullness after a small meal, extreme fatigue. Some women have more frequent urge to urinate, pain down one leg, pain in one ovary. But the difference is, there was a gal, a woman doctor that listened to us in the early years out at the University of Oregon, and she did a research study, and she found the difference is when they're persistent, more than 2 weeks, they're different than normal for your body. It's not your monthly period, it's not the way you normally feel. And so women know there's something different. So we urge women to track that. We actually have a calendar at Ovar'coming Together on the website that you can pull off and track. We say, what time of the day? What were you doing when you had these symptoms? And then what were the symptoms? And track that. And then you go to the doctor, you say, this is what's wrong. It's
right.
not, I don't feel good.
Be your self-advocate.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, you no doubt have changed hundreds of lives, no doubt have saved hundreds of lives, because you have been very proactive. How did this change your life?
Well, I think number one, I became a believer that cancer is curable. And that's key. And also that we have to help other women find it in early curable stages. And we have to empower women to confront the physicians and say, this is what I want. I want the CA-125 because I've got these symptoms that are persistent. I know it's not a solid test. And I want a vaginal ultrasound, because it's when there's a presence of a cyst along with the symptoms, then we worry about that. And then that you want a gynecologic oncologist involved. So just empowering women. In my own personal life, when you have a lot of chemo to go through and you've been through major surgery, you have to sit a lot.
You're a go-getter, absolutely, with your business and everything.
I think God used that as a time to say, I want you to know me better. And a lot of growth in scripture, a lot of studying with Kay Arthur and Beth Moore, and I think that put me on a continual learning journey and realizing that we have to be armed at all times with our faith, and with not just our faith and not meditation, but actually on solid scriptures.
And no doubt that that has enriched you in so many ways, so that you have that foundation of that faith, so that you can continue to reach out. Something that you did for cancer years ago in talking about it and empowering women and encouraging women to reach out to their doctors. You are very much doing that with another subject, that of mental illness, specifically depression. Let's shift and talk about, why you are here today to also empower families that are dealing with loved ones or perhaps themselves with depression.
Our son, Jeff, died 3 years ago. He battled with depression. It hit out of nowhere when he was 20. He was engaged, called us about midnight in tears, saying he'd broken his engagement and didn't know why, and we just thought, oh, he's got the jitters. Really, that depression battle that almost took him at age 20, we thought was sort of under control. He moved to Montana, started a successful business, did meet a love of his life, Liza. They got married, they had 2 children, living the dream life, skiing all winter and running an adventure company. He kayaked from the from Yellowstone National Park to the Gulf of Mexico before he started that business. It's kind of his way to get back. And so, I thought, oh, he's good. And when it struck again, he hid that from us for about a year. And then he and his wife begged us to help. At that point, and really up until Jeff died, depression and anxiety to me weren't real illnesses. It was like, well, go for a run. You'll feel better. Well, just see yourself the way everybody, get over it. And he had asked my husband to run his business. We'd never been involved in his business, but my husband was out there every 3 weeks the last year of Jeff's life trying to help him get his business going. Thought, well, if we can get his business going, he'll feel good. And at one point, we were all sitting with a banker whom Jeff owed a great deal of money. And the banker was just encouraging him and telling him how much he believed in him. And I walked out of there and I said, Jeff, did you just hear this man, how much he believes in you? Can't you see yourself that way? And he looked at me and he said, Mom, you have no idea what it feels like to wake up every morning and think you're supposed to kill yourself.
Let's stop at that point. A devastating conversation, I'm sure, that your son had with you. We need to take this break, but we will continue with Pam Faerber after this. Welcome back to Full Circle. We are continuing our conversation with Pam Faerber. When we left off, she was talking about the devastating effects that depression had on her own son, and he ultimately committed suicide. Pam, you used the phrase that he died of depression.
Right.
Why do you separate the two from, the issue of suicide versus the issue of depression?
I hate the term committed suicide. You don't commit yourself to death. You die of an illness. Depression is an illness. It's not recognized as an illness. I didn't recognize it as an illness. And truthfully, there's a huge gap. And the gap is between a lot of crisis intervention at suicide issues, but when you are as a family knowing you have someone that's in a clinical depression and you try to find resources, it's extremely difficult. We found none. I mean, we didn't know what to do.
And you are very proactive. In fact, you talk about empowering families facing depression. Tell me about your Big Bear website.
Okay. After Jeff died, I was blessed to meet a lot of people from here in Indianapolis that are former Lilly executives, had worked on Prozac and Cymbalta, and they helped me find things I wished I'd known about before. As I find that, and I've gone to the National Network of Depression Centers annual meeting, and I've been to the One Mind for Research annual meeting, and so people want to know, well, what do you do? So I made up my own name of empowering families facing depression, and as I find resources, I add them to my list. In addition to that, out in Montana where our son lived, he lived in Gardner, the north entrance to Yellowstone Park, little bitty town, dead ends into the park, an hour and a half from any resource of help in terms of a professional psychiatrist or psychologist. We started the Big Bear Stampede to honor him because Jeff loved to do crazy athletic things, and he loved to have fun, and he loved Gardner. With that fun run, we do things to make educational efforts in the town and in the community, awareness of depression. What are the symptoms? We bring educational programs into the school. We try to bring resources into the town for those people facing depression. We're working to try to bring a zero suicide trial there. But as we find resources, we add them to the Big Bear Stampede website, because that way anybody can access them. So bigbearstampede.org, go under resources, and as I find anything, we add it to that website.
And it's a very empowering website, and we encourage you to go to that, and also some of the national websites that are available. But you know, when we talk about signs and symptoms of depression, I'm curious if you noticed any of these with your son. Loss of interest in daily activities, appetite or weight changes, sleep changes, anger or irritability, loss of energy, self-loathing. Did you or his family see any of those or notice a change?
Well, I was not with Jeff that last couple of years because he was married living in Montana, but he did, from what his wife tells me, he wanted to sleep all the time. Here is a man that was known as the Pied Piper in the town, had done adventure camps for the kids. All the kids in town hung out on the deck of his store because everybody loved Jeff. Very charismatic. People loved working for him. He had great vision on how to do this store. That leader guy went on the antidepressant drugs to being kind of a zombie, feet literally dragging, would go to work and work in the booth checking people in for rafting instead of running his company.
Sure, so obviously some of those signs and symptoms
Huge change.
were there.
Lack of belief in self.
Absolutely. You know, when you started talking about your own journey with cancer, many people would say the C word, and we don't want to talk about cancer. 20, 30 years ago, that was just the way it was. Now I think we're starting to break down the stigma about mental illness and depression. What are you hoping that?
I think we're a long way from breaking the stigma. I was very frustrated the night that Robin Williams died, because over and over on Fox News, they kept saying, took his own life, committed suicide. And I, for the first time in my life, emailed them and said, could you just say he died of depression? I was very encouraged the following day on the Today Show when they brought their doctor in. And she said, maybe this time we won't put it back away.
Thank you. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Full Circle. It's a pleasure to introduce our next two guests on today's program. Joining me now, we have Dr. George Kirtley, who is a dentist specializing in cosmetic dentistry. Also, we have C.W. Mundy, who both of these gentlemen are internationally known in their field. He is a landscape artist as well as specializing in beautiful still lifes. It is great to have you both here.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Now, I might mention that you are going to be performing in the last segment of our program, and I want to bring up a study that I had read about. When people listen to music, there is a dopamine effect that goes in our brain, and it makes us feel better. So I'm going to ask you both, why do you like to perform music? I mean, here you're a dentist, you're an artist. What is it about music that really excites you and wants you to perform? George?
Oh, I think for me, it's a release. It allows me to kind of, forget a lot of things I deal with on a daily basis. Not that I don't like what I do every day, but it's just another form of art, kind of an extension of what I do in my office in a little different context.
How about you, C.W.?
I just like to create, whether it's music or art, and the thing that I love about music that I had a hard time finding in art until I started teaching was the performance. I love to have that energy to try to, turn on a crowd, and it's exciting. That's the dopamine kicks in.
So do you think it's really a lot different for you when you perform versus when you are doing your artwork? Because that same study also noted that we get that same dopamine effect when we are engaged in artwork.
It's always different in being in front of an audience, you know, and that's why I love to teach, because I've got 20 students out there and I get to do my shtick.
So you get that interaction that
Oh
you may
yeah,
not
it's great.
get.
I just love it. I love people.
Well, there's no doubt that being in front of an audience, you'd have to love people. But, you know, let's talk a little bit about the fact that some people perhaps have yet to tap into that artistic ability, whether it is artwork or music. They're a little bit shy, but maybe they're retired and now might be a good time to start up some kind of an instrument. What advice do you have?
Never too late to do that. I think it keeps you young. Your entire life you've been committed to, maybe making it for you, your family, your children, and that's been wonderful. But there's that time now that you have where you could actually exploit some of those things that you've kind of been wanting to do all your life, and it's just never too late. As a matter of fact, I think this time of life is possibly the most creative time of life.
I like hearing that because, here on Full Circle, we do like to encourage people to live their life to its fullest, no matter what our age. So we're almost out of time, C.W. What parting advice do you have for someone that either wants to pick up a banjo like what you play or a harmonica like George Kirtley here, or maybe it's a paintbrush?
I just think it's great. Creativity is a wonderful thing, and it's an exciting adventure. It's a journey, and a lot of women that I had as students, they, like George said, they had to raise a family, and now it's their turn, to get those creative wheels rolling, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, I heard you both warming up. We're going to go ahead and take a break and let you go back over to the music set. I'm looking forward to your performance. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, don't go away. We are back with a performance with these two guests and one other after this.
Stay tuned. Musical Showcase is coming up next. And now, here's our Musical Showcase.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that music can be rewarding and very fulfilling in our life, and that's why I love this segment of our program. Coming up, we are going to have C.W. Mundy, George Kirtley, and their friend Bob Snoddy. He is the vocalist and guitarist. They will be performing Trouble in Mind. I'm Susanne McAlister. I'm glad you could join us, and I'll see you next time, Full Circle.
Trouble in mind, I'm blue. Won't be blue always. You know that sun gonna shine my back door someday. Going down to the river, take my old rocking chair. Blues don't get me, baby, gonna rock away from here. Trouble in mind, I'm blue. Won't be blue always. You know that sun gonna shine my back door someday. when the moon comes over the mountain, you know I'll be on my way. Ain't nothing around here now make a good man want to stay. Trouble in mind, I'm blue, won't be blue always. You know that sun gonna shine my back door someday.